And joining me now is former Congressman and former Governor of South Carolina, Mark Sanford. Governor, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, sir.
And my condolences to you. You were certainly very close with Senator Graham. Of course, you were elected back in the 90s during the Gingrich Revolution. You've had a long relationship with him. I want to get your reaction to the selection of his sister to fill his Senate seat, at least in the short term.
You know, there are no happy endings to these kinds of stories, but I think that's about as happy as you can get. The fact that, you know, that she serves out the last 5 months or so of his term, I think is a fitting tribute to the life that he lived and to, frankly, their closeness. They've always been very, very close as brother and sister.
And take me back to those first hours. How did you first hear of Senator Graham's passing, and what was your initial reaction?
Former staffer called me at 3:15 yesterday morning, and it was so, I mean, just out of place. I said, "This makes no sense. This can't be." And he said, "Look, you know, Governor, I wouldn't be calling you at 3:15 in the morning, waking you, if this wasn't something that I thought was very significant, important, and something you ought to know." And it was a former staffer, as I mentioned, that called me, and then a succession of calls from there, and it obviously became real. But it was shocking and not the kind of thing that you could really believe. It's like, well, this makes no sense. I mean, Lindsey has been a force to be reckoned with since the early 90s here in South Carolina. And so the idea of him being gone is just something that doesn't fit. It's shocking and saddening.
Governor, what will you remember most about him? And also, what do you think Senator Graham's legacy will be?
What I most remember are just the happy times. You know, we started in Congress together in the early 90s, and then we ran for statewide office at the same time, which meant we went to all the chicken dinners and barbecues and all those sorts of things at the you know, he ran for Senate and I ran for governor. So, you know, just a lot of funny moments. He had a delightful sense of humor, the way he'd turn a phrase and take an otherwise serious situation and bring a laugh. I remember that. And what I think stands out is the fact that he was willing to risk political capital. I mean, I think that whether you like him or didn't like him, I think to his credit, you know, think about the immigration reform bill, think about things like that. He was willing to risk political capital. And that's something we see too few times these days. And I think that'll be missed in the institution of the Senate. I think it'll be missed here in South Carolina for the way that he led.
And Governor, as we mentioned, he, of course, Senator Graham was a giant on Capitol Hill, but also on the world stage. How much of a void do you think he'll leave both in domestic politics, but especially in foreign policy? I know we were having this discussion with Monica over at the White House earlier. You know, he was seen as the voice in the president's ear. I know you broke with your friend Senator Graham over support of President Trump, but how much of a void do you think he leaves behind when it comes to foreign policy in this administration?
I think a great deal. I mean, that was his area of expertise and that was his focus. I think that, you know, he was a conduit. He knew how to run the back channels on ideas. And was forceful in the way he did so. I think there'll be a real void left there.
Well, you just reacted to Governor McMaster naming his sister Darlene to fill that vacancy through the end of his term. And there is now a rush among South Carolina Republicans to fill Senator Graham's Senate seat for the November election. Are you interested in throwing your hat into the ring? And if not, is there someone you hope to see win that special election?
I've gotten more than a fair number of calls on that, and I think I'll mold that as time goes on. But right now, I just want to mourn Lindsey and stay focused on, you know, what's ahead for him and his family.
If you could just leave us with, you know, another story of Senator Graham, something that, you know, perhaps think back to the early 90s when you and him came here to Washington. Anything you want to leave us with that you think would honor his life and legacy?
It's a longer story. We don't have time to get into it, but there's a fantastic story that goes almost back to founding fathers kind of feel, in that a number of us, 11 or 13 of us, had voted against what's called the rule, which is the mechanism by which the majority controls the House floor, based on some things we didn't like. Long story short, we were drugged down to HC5, which is down in the bowels of the Capitol. And Steve Largent, who played professional football with the Seahawks, former NFL Hall of Famer, stood up and said, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to be intimidated, and went through a beautiful speech as to why he thought the caucus in this case was wrong. Lindsey came up right afterward and said, well, Mr. Speaker, I can be intimidated. Just brought down the House in his timing and the way he diffused an otherwise fairly tense situation. I could give you 100 stories like that with Lindsey.
Sure. And one more, Governor. Look, so many tributes have poured in here in Washington and really around the world. Still, there are some on the Democratic side who have a different view of Senator Graham's politics. They argue that he went back on his principles when he supported President Trump. That is something that, again, you and him didn't see eye to eye on, specifically on that point, perhaps. But what would you say to people who say that Senator Graham, perhaps went back on some of his principle in support of the president to have access to the president of the United States?
Again, Lindsey and I agreed on that and many other things, but he was a pragmatic politician, and pragmatic politicians are about not necessarily being iconoclast or idealistic on views. They're very practical. How do I find and stay close to power, and then how do I use the tools that come with power? And he was very studied on that, and so he viewed it as a means to an end, which is by staying close to McCain and then ultimately Trump. I'll have more levers to pull in making a difference in my state. He did it very well.
Governor Mark Sanford, thank you so much for your time.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or watch live on our YouTube channel.